Hello everyone, this is Don with MecSoft Support, and this video I'm real excited to talk about our G-Code editor module. Now the G-Code editor is available to you as a MecSoft CAM user if you are active on your annual maintenance. So as long as you're active on your maintenance, this plug-in G-Code editor will be available to you free of charge. Okay, let's take a moment to review what we're going to do in this video. First, we're going to load the G-Code editor module and then load the G-Code file into the editor. We'll review the G-Code editor preferences. Then we'll perform some quick edits to the G-Code file and save the changes. Next, we'll load a tool library, define a tool crib, and discuss how tools are used within the editor. We'll perform a quick tool motion simulation. Then we'll define a stock model and perform a cut material simulation. Then we'll perform some additional edits and save the G-Code file. So if you're ready, let's get started. We'll go to the main menu at the top, we'll drop it down, and we'll pick G-Code Editor to load the module. And then also, as you can see in the G-Code editor module, you have a G-Code editor browser on the left, and you can size the browser to whatever you're liking. And you can move the browser around on the screen to dock it in another location if you so desire. Okay, let's load the part for this guide. So we'll go to the open icon and we'll go to the quick start folder located in your product installation folder. And there are several files related to this quick start guide, and I'll mention them here. We'll open the part model now, and then we will open the other parts as we go along. So the parts here are, let's go change this to all files so we can see them all. Okay, so we've got the G-Code Editor Quick Start Guide part file. Okay, and there's a completed version under that. There is also a G-Code Editor Quick Start Guide tool library, and that's the CSV file right here above it. And then there is also a G-Code Editor NC file that will load in just a moment. Okay, so let's go ahead and load the part file. And you see our part, it's a prismatic part, mainly well, entirely 2.5 axis tool paths required for this part. Okay, one thing to note here, you don't have to have a 3D part to edit G-Code files with the G-Code editor. We're using a part here only because it makes it easier to do cut material simulations, of which I'm going to show you in just a moment. So we've got the G-Code Editor Browser Project tab located on the left, and we've got various sections on the menu at the top. We've got a setup section, a G-Code section, and a file operations section. And then down below we also have the project tree where all of your G-Code files and related items are listed. So let's go ahead and load a G-Code file into the project tab. So we'll pick load, and we'll go to the quick start installation folder, and we'll select the G-Code file called G-Code Editor Quick Start Guide.nc. Okay, so what you see now in the graphic screen, you see that the G-Code in this G-Code file is displayed graphically on the screen. And also in the project tree, you see that the G-Code Editor Quick Start Guide.nc file was loaded into the project, and you also see that there are 4 tool references underneath, and you notice that these are flagged. Now, The reason they are flagged right now is that G-code editor is looking for a tool to match this tool number in your tool library. So it doesn't find it, so it flags them as dirty. And you don't need to resolve these flags just to open G-code files and do some quick editing on it. So you really only need to define your tools if you're going to do some tool motion simulation and some cut material simulation. I'll show you both of those. So let's go ahead and do some quick edits to the G-code file. So you just right-click on the file and pick Edit. And you see this message, no appropriate tools, use the default tool. And that's because we don't have a tool library loaded, but that's no problem. We'll go ahead and pick Yes. So it just puts a default tool at the start of the G-code tool motions. So here on the left, you see the G-code file that we have loaded. And to start with, let's go ahead and take a look at some preferences that you can set in the G-code editor. So we'll go ahead and pick to the far right of the Edit and Simulate tab. You'll see the Preferences icon. So what do we have for preferences in the G-code editor? Well, you got your user interface preferences, and you'll notice these same options show up in other modules. So you have your context tooltips that pop up. You can turn those on and off, and you can show expressions in dialog fields. You can turn that on and off, and you can set the ribbon style. This is the style of the menus area in the G-code editor. Move down to the text editor preferences. Here is where you can say what colors you want different aspects of the G-code to display in. And also in this tab, you can specify where you want the G-code to be output to. In other words, in the project tab, you can after you make edits, you can output your G-code, and it'll go to this program. So if you have a DNC program that you use to send your NC files to your controller, you can specify your DNC program here, and it'll G-code edit will send the G-code directly to that program. Okay, so let's look at the toolpath preferences. So here again, you got rapid motions and cut motions and arc motions that you can set the colors for. And also you can set the thickness of the toolpath motions. In other words, if you want to see them a little bit better, you can increase the thickness and pick Apply, and you see the thickness gets thicker. The line types get thicker. So if you set it at 1, they're kind of thin. I like them a little bit thick so my eyes can see them better. So we'll leave it there. Now, also, this section here is pretty important. Circle center IJK format. Now, you may have noticed at times when you load G-code files into your controller, and if your controller has a preview, like a backplot, like what we're looking at here on the screen, and you happen to notice that your arc motions are really bizarre. For example, let's do a change here and apply that, and you see you may have seen something like this on your controller screen. Well, the reason it's like that is that your controller is not set to this arc format that the G-code file was created in. So if you see some wild arc motions like this, you can go to your preferences and change your arc center format. Now, a quick note here about the arc center IJK format. What we're doing in the preferences is we're changing the arc format to match what's in the G-code file. When you make a change here, it's not going to go back and change, the format of your file. That's an extensive change. So what we're doing here is we're just matching what's in the G-code file so that they display properly. If you see this on your controller, you need to go back into the CAM module and adjust your IJK format settings in the post-process generator to match what your machine controller is expecting to see. Okay, let's continue. And also down below, you got some default feed rate values and nominal cut feed values. These defaults are used for toolpath machining time calculations. So we've moved down to the stock section. You can display, you can define the colors of how your in-process stock is displayed when you do a cut material simulation. And then also you can adjust the transparency of the stock when it's displayed on the screen. Now for the cutting tool section, here you can set the color of the cutting tool itself on the screen. Now for the simulate section, you'll notice some of these options. They're similar to the mill module and the turn module. You can adjust the simulation mode, and you can adjust the simulation accuracy. Now, one thing I do want to change, I'm going to go back to the cutting tools section, and I'm going to change, since the stock color right now is really close to the same color as the tool, I'm going to change the color of the tool to say blue, so it shows up better during the cut material simulations. So we'll pick apply. You see that the tool changed to blue, and we'll pick OK. Okay, now we got our G-code file loaded into the editor. Right now, let's just do some quick edits, and we'll save the G-code file. You don't have to do any of the, the preferences changes. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to load a tool library or tool crib. You might notice that on the project tab. All you need to do is load the G-code file, load it into the editor, and you can do some quick editing. Okay. If you notice, this file doesn't have any line numbers. Now this column on the far left is line numbers for the editor itself. Those aren't the actual line numbers that would show up in the G-code file. This column is just for reference. So let's go ahead and add line numbers to the G-code file. So we'll go to the Edit tab, we'll pick Add Line Numbers, and you'll see that the line numbers are inserted to the left of the G-code lines. And you'll notice that comments are not assigned a line number. So now you also notice that the G-codes do not have any spaces in them. Sometimes it's easier for you to read it if you insert spaces between the actual G-codes. So we can go ahead and add some spaces. We'll pick Insert Spaces from the Edit tab, and you'll see that spaces were added between the G-codes throughout the entire G-code file. Okay, so we made some quick edits. What we can do here is we can save it right from the Edit tab. Just pick the Save button, and it warns you that G-code file already exists and asks you if you want to replace it. We'll pick OK. Okay, what we're going to do now is let's make one additional change to the G-code file, because I want to show you something, and when we go back to the Project tab. So for now, let's just delete the spaces. Okay, and then we'll return back to the Project tab by selecting the back arrow right here. Okay, now you notice that there's a flag on the G-code file itself. We knew that there was going to be flags on the tools because we have no tool library defined and no tool crib defined. This flag on the G-code file lets you know that edits have been made to the G-code file and they have not been saved yet. And you can save the file from the Project tab also, so just by picking Save. So now the flag goes away. Now let's load our tool library and set up a tool crib. Now, the tool library file that we load is the same tool library file that you create from the mill module. So if you want to backplot your toolpath, your G-code from a toolpath that you created in the mill module, you can just go ahead and save your tool library. I'll put your tool library that you're using for that part and to a tool library file, and this is the file we're going to open here. So we'll go to the project tab, we'll select library, drop down the menu and pick load. And we'll go to the quick start folder in the install path, and you'll see that there's a file called G-code edit quick start guide.csv. This is the tool library format supported by the G-code editor. Now, one thing to notice, or one thing you probably already know, is that in the mill module, when you save your tool library, you can choose two different formats. You can choose a VKB format and a CSV format. If you're going to open the tool library in the G-code editor, save it as a CSV file format. We'll go ahead and open it. And you'll see that the tool library dialog of the G-code editor is displayed, listing all of the tools in the library. And you'll see that the tool number column, we got tool number 1, 8, 14, and 2. And these are used, the tools used by this G-code file. So let's pick OK. And then we'll also, now, even though we have a tool library loaded, we need to set up a tool crib. That's because in your tool library, you may have multiple tools with the same tool number. In your shop, you may have hundreds of tools, and they may be in your standards, the way you apply your tool paths and your tools. You may have more than one tool with tool number 1, say. So you define a tool crib with a subset of those tools in the library and assign those tool numbers that are assigned to those tools, and how they appear in the tool crib is what will be selected from when load a G-code file that references tools. So let's go ahead and create the tool crib. And the tool crib dialog displays, and what we're going to do is select the Add Station button. And what happens here, when you pick Add Station, it loads the tool library dialog. It shows all of your tools that you can use to create your tool crib. For this part, we need all of the tools, so we're just going to drag a rectangle. This is a left-click drag just to highlight all of the tools and pick OK. So now, if you notice over here under your G-code file, all the flags next to the tools have gone away. That means that G-code editor has found these tool numbers in the tool crib, and here they are listed here. So we'll pick OK. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to perform a quick tool motion simulation. And now that we have the correct tools loaded into our tool crib, the tool that's displayed on the screen will be the actual size tool being used. So let's go ahead and from the project tab, select the G-code file, right-click, and we'll pick Simulate. And you'll see that the G-code is loaded into the editor, the Simulate tab is activated, and it's running to the G-code file, displaying the correct tool as it goes through each tool motion. And also here, which is a cool thing to do, is you don't have to run the entire simulation. You can just select a location in the G-code file and use the up and down arrow keys to actually show the tool in that, where the tool is located at that specific line of G-code. So this is a very good visual analysis, so to speak, of the tool motion itself as it navigates through the G-code file. Okay, so also what I wanted to mention here is give you an idea what the Simulate tab does. Now, if you're familiar with our milling module or even the turning module or any of the CAM modules that has a simulation tab, the commands on here are identical to the mill module. For example, let's go ahead and run the simulation. We'll pick play, start at the top, and you can pick pause, and it'll stop the simulation at that specific line of code. At this point, you can use the up arrow keys and move around, or you can go ahead and step through the simulation. And you can also go directly to the end, and it's going to pause the simulation and just go all the way to the end of the G-code file and show the end of the file. Now for the interesting part. I mentioned previously that you can perform a cut material simulation of your backplotted G-code file. And to do that, you need to have a stock model defined. And let's go back to the project tab, and we'll go to the stock menu, and we'll create a box stock. And again, the dialogues are very similar, if not identical, to our other CAM modules for stock definition. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pick the Copy Model Bounding Box button, which creates a stock that is exactly the size of your part. So that's what we want, so we'll pick OK there. So now we have a stock displayed on the screen. Now, one thing to note, it's a little bit easier to view your cut material simulation if the part model itself is not displayed. So we're going to type Control H to hide we're going to select our part, hit Control H, and that will hide it. So now we just see the G-code file and the stock model. Now, one thing I did want to do, I wanted to add some material to the top of the stock. So let's go back into the box stock, and we'll add 0.15, say, of material to the top of the stock model. So you see that it added material to the top, and we'll pick OK. So here's our stock model and our G-code file. Now what we can do, when we perform a simulation, you will get a in-process stock displayed at each cut motion in the G-code file. So let's go ahead and right-click and run the simulation again. So now you see you have a cut model simulation of the actual G-code file. Now that's pretty cool. So you got, now you can see your actual model that was created just from the G-code file. Again, I mentioned previously that you don't have to have a part file. If all you have is a G-code file, you can load it and just define a stock, give it just a large enough dimension so that it encompasses your toolpath, and then you can perform a cut material simulation. Now, as mentioned previously, you can also work your way through the toolpath motions as you work through the G-code file. So in order to, you can pause the simulation to see your in-process cut stock. So go ahead and pick play. And you don't have to wait for it to go all the way to the end. You can hit pause, and you can step through it one motion at a time, or you can go back to the beginning, and then you can step through it one cut motion at a time and see the actual in-process stock as it is being removed from the part. And you can step all the way through it. And I'm just hitting the step button here, and it'll step through each of the cut motions of the tool and perform an in-process stock cut model for you to evaluate. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to perform an estimated machining time on the G-code file. So any G-code file that you load into the G-code editor, you can get a quick estimate of how long it's going to take to machine the G-code file. So let's return back to, you can do this either from the Edit tab or from the Project tab. From the Edit tab, just pick Information, little info button, and it'll display an information dialog with the name of the G-code file, how many lines of code, and the estimated machining time. Now, the estimated machining time is based on your feed rate values that you have defined in the G-code file. And if you noticed back when we looked at the preferences, you can set some default feed rate values for rapid motions and other default motions to get a more accurate machining time estimate. So okay, let's pick OK there. And if we go back to the Project tab, you can select the G-code file and pick info from here to get the same information and estimated machining time. Okay, let's perform one additional edit to the G-code file. This is a common edit that users perform, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do that, how easy it is to do by editing the G-code file directly. So we're going to right-click on the G-code file on the Project tab, pick Edit, and we're going to right-click anywhere in the G-code file to display a pop-up menu of commands. Now these commands, bottom, top, tool, spindle, feed rate, those are navigation commands. For instance, you can just go to the next tool and it'll go to that line with the next tool on it. Pick tool again, it'll go to the next line for your next tool, and you can work your way through each of your tools, and it'll show you in the line of G-code where your tool motions, where your tool is defined. Okay, so what I want to do, I want to go to the bottom of the G-code file, and you'll see down here when it stops cutting, the tool is going to retract 1.5 inches above the part, or above the zero home point of the machine, which in this case happens to be the bottom of the G-code. So you'll see it's not retracting up very high in order to get that part out of there and for evaluation purposes as well. So we're going to go ahead and change this on line 562. We're going to change it to Z 5.0, and you'll see that the tool was retracted up 5 inches, and now if you up and down arrow through it, you'll see that the tool was retracted up 5 inches away, and now you can have a better access to the part to get it off the table and to look at the G-code or at the cut motions on the actual part on the table. Okay, since we made an additional edit to the G-code file, we're going to go ahead and pick the Save button. And also, I wanted to point out in the online help for the G-code editor, let's go ahead and show you the online help. Pick the Help button, and let me drag this over here. So this is the online help for the G-code editor module. You can get, you have access to printed documentation if you don't like, well, not if you don't like, but if you prefer to look at a PDF document and print it out versus looking at the online help, because sometimes it can be, a little different to find information and to read information from the online help system. So all you got to do is just go to the main welcome page, and there's a button or a link right at the top says Prefer Printed Documentation. Click here, and that will load your default browser. And let me drag this over here. That'll load your default browser, and what you see is for this version we have a new resource guide for each CAM platform. So we got a resource guide here, and you can scroll through that. It's got different sections. We'll go to the G-code editor section, and you'll see all the printed manuals that you can download and print out. Here's the quick start guide that we're looking at now. And let's scroll down through that. It just goes through the steps that we did in this particular video. So that's it for now. If you got any more questions or like some more information, and one thing to remember, the G-Code editor module is only available if you're active on your annual maintenance. So keep your maintenance activated, and the G-Code editor module will be available to you from the CAM menu anytime you need it. Okay, take care and have a good day.